Welcome to the First Unitarian Church in New Bedford's virtual service. My name is Laurie Waclawick, and I am working with Eileen Sorrentino as worship associates for today's service. We welcome you this morning. First Unitarian Church is a member of the Unitarian Universal Association of Congregations, and together we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and justice of every person, justice, equality, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence for which we all are a part. We now begin our service with Eileen lighting the chalice. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. we gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
The opening words. For today's opening words, I would like to read from the preamble to the United States Constitution, written in 1776. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Now we will read the covenant. We come together as a religious community, upholding freedom of conscience, right relationship, and the inherent worth of all people. We value our diversity and pledge to care for one another in the spirit of compassion, to speak and listen to each other with respect, and to promote justice and kindness in the world.
If we were in church, I would invite you to come forward and light a candle and share a personal joy or sorrow with the rest of us, but we aren't. unfortunately. So I will light candles as your representative and express some of my own concerns and maybe yours as well. The first candle, if it will light, there. The first candle is for all of us who are isolated and distanced from loved ones, especially in this holiday season. And I'm lighting a second candle of joy. Joy that we have social media that allows us to stay in touch with one another. And while it's not perfect, it's certainly better than nothing and something to be grateful for. The third candle is for the mother who lost her son on Wednesday when he was shot and killed on his front porch as he was entering his own home. He was a Black boy, not surprisingly. And I'm lighting one final candle for those who have yet to find a spiritual home and a final wish that they may find their home with us. First reading. This is quoted in the book In Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Dr. Pamela Jones told the author about a bus ride she took with her mother when she was a 4-year-old Black girl. My mother and I were going into the city. We got on the Greyhound bus. I was behind my mother. She wasn't holding my hand at the time, and I plopped down in the first seat I found. A few minutes later, my mother was looking for me, and she took me to the back of the bus and explained why I couldn't sit there. We were very poor, and most of the Black people around us who I knew were also poor. And the images I had of white America were from going into the city and seeing who was behind the counter in the stores and seeing who my mother worked for. It became clear there was a distance.
Now I'm going to go into the spirit of meditation. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion, to be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich, to study hard, think quietly, talk gently, ask frankly, to listen to stars and birds, to babes and sages with open heart, to bear all cheerfully, do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never, to let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. This will be my symphony. William Henry Channing. This is the time where we would normally accept the offering at our service. We thank you for your continuing support during this pandemic. All donations may be sent to the church at 71 8th Street, New Bedford, Mass. 02740, or on our website, uunewbedford.org. Go to the Give page, scroll to the bottom, and click on the yellow Donate button. We thank you so much for your kind donations.
Today's sermon is on Black Lives Matter. We are finally coming to the end of 2020, a year none of us is likely to forget. Horrific things have happened all year long, from the personal, the death of our beloved minister's son, to the universal, a pandemic raging around the world, killing more people here in the United States than all the wars in American history except the Civil War. And in the middle of this horrible year, we watched a Black man being murdered before our eyes by a white police officer, protected from interference by other police officers. That horror launched the Black Lives Matter movement and woke up many of us. That event made me think and read and try to figure out what was going on and if I was part of the problem or could be part of the solution. I am a middle-class, older white woman, privileged by those facts alone. I can count the number of Black people I know on two hands. I have one Black friend and 3 warm acquaintances. I met my first Black person at camp when I was 10. I lived my first 8 years in a triple-decker in an industrial city. The city was mostly white, but down the street was a building that housed Black families. We white kids never interacted with the Black kids or our families with their families. We kids thought that they must be bad people because their children were allowed to play in the street, and the police often came and took the adults away in paddy wagons. Now, with distance and some understanding, I realized the paddy wagon wasn't coming because the people were bad, but because they were Black. When my one Black friend took me home to meet her family, I was the first white person her family members had ever met socially. She has 2 daughters and 1 son, now grown. She taught me a lot about what it was like to live Black in America in the 20th and 21st centuries, things I never experienced and could never imagine. I never had someone trailing me around a store, almost every store I went into, assuming I was there to steal. I never had to fear that I would die when a policeman pulled me over for speeding or making a driving error. I was never afraid that calling the police to my home for help would prove fatal. I never had to have the talk with my children about how to behave to keep from being killed by our peacekeepers or by street gangs of other kids. I never had to listen to slurs whispered or shouted at me because of the color of my skin. I never had to convince healthcare professionals that my complaints were real, my pain was real, or my needs were real. I had good prenatal and postnatal care, something often denied even professional Black women. I wasn't afraid that every time my children left home, I might never see them alive again. The distance or chasm that Dr. Pamela Jones referred to in the earlier reading was never clear to me. Ta-Nehisi Coates writes of a little girl who wanders home at age 7 after being teased in school and asks her parents, "Are we niggers? And what does that mean?" That chasm is achingly visible to every Black person, but invisible to most white people. When Ta-Nehisi Coates arrived at Howard University, the preeminent Black college, he was amazed to see that Black people were not homogeneous. They were as diverse and multi-talented as all people. And with that insight came the additional insight that all white people were not homogeneous. And that's no surprise to us. Of course, we're all different. But to a Black young man who grew up in fear for the safety of his own body, from his father, from the streets, from the schools, the revelation was stunning. Chimamanda Adichie, the brilliant Nigerian writer, says in Americana that she never discovered race until she came to America. She didn't even think of herself as Black. And that is because, as Coates says, Americans believe in the reality of race as a defined, indubitable feature of the natural world. Racism, the need to ascribe bone-deep features to people and then humiliate, reduce and destroy them, inevitably follows from this unalterable condition of race. In this way, racism is rendered as the innocent daughter of Mother Nature, and one is left to deplore the Middle Passage or the Trail of Tears the way one deplores an earthquake, a hurricane, or any other phenomenon that can be cast as beyond the handiwork of men. Difference in skin, color, and hair is old, but the belief in the preeminence of hue and hair, the notion that these factors can correctly organize a society and that they signify deeper attributes which are indelible, this is the new idea at the heart of these new people who have been brought up hopelessly, tragically, deceitfully to believe they are white and superior always to Black. As Isabel Wilkerson says in her best-selling book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, casteism and racism overlap. According to Wilkerson, caste is the granting or withholding of respect, status, honor, attention, privileges, resources, benefit of the doubt, and human kindness to someone on the basis of their perceived rank or standing in the hierarchy. And whether consciously or not, some people, no matter how far down they are in the socioeconomic ladder, feel fortunate they are not at the bottom because at least they're not Black. But those of us who are more privileged are not off the hook. Middle and owning class white people disproportionately support policies and practices that uphold white supremacy. And it is the very wealthy who benefit most from racism and white supremacy. Black people did not cause the situation they find themselves in. White people did that, starting with slavery and continuing in the century and a half since in housing and employment discrimination, unequal treatment under the law, unequal medical care, unequal education, and a criminal justice system that singles them out for punishment. And because they did not get where they are because of their own actions, they cannot make progress without the involvement of white people. They were enslaved for 300 years and have only been free for 150. Often, a white person's knee-jerk response when confronted with institutional racism is very defensive. I am not responsible. We've all had it hard. It would all work out if they would just work harder and behave. I'm not a racist. The possibility of being a racist is unthinkable. So when faced with the thought that they just might be racist, they just might be complicit, many people just shut down. Sure, all lives matter and blue lives matter, but a little boy held a sign at a Black Lives Matter rally. Yes, all lives matter, but right now it's the Black lives that need help and protection, and that's what Black Lives Matter means. So what do some of the leading voices and activists in the Black Lives Matter movement say when asked to share their hopes, asks, and even demands for white people in America today? Stop saying all lives matter. All lives will matter when Black lives matter, and Black lives don't matter right now. We need to say Black Lives Matter to change that. We need to change that individually within our communities, and we need to change that systemically and systematically. Stop acting like Black people are stupid. We are politically savvy, and Black women especially have a higher voter turnout than anyone else. Don't ask us what you can do to help. This is your problem as much as ours, and you need to figure it out for yourselves. We can't ask Black people what we should do. We need to figure that out on our own by organizing ourselves and setting our own agendas. We will make mistakes, embarrass ourselves, but all learning is like that. We say in our covenant every week that we uphold the inherent worth of all people, that we value our diversity, and pledge to care for one another and to promote justice and kindness in the world. Isn't it time we stepped up and matched our actions to our aspirations? In this month and this time of stillness, some of it enforced on us by forces we cannot control, let us take time to reflect on our own place in this world and what we can do to make the words of our Constitution and our covenant ring true. Closing words. This morning's closing words are paraphrased from Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption. I am paraphrasing him, paraphrasing Yaakov Hamel in addressing the subject of hopefulness. People need hope, not that pie in the sky stuff, not a preference for optimism over pessimism, but rather an orientation of the spirit, the kind of hope that creates a willingness to position oneself in a hopeless place and be a witness. That allows one to believe in a better future, even in the face of abuse of power. That kind of hope makes one strong.
And now it's time for us to extinguish our challenge. But not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you.